Okay, let's give you guys some practice. So somehow obtain the gradient for this straight line. So remember, the gradient is always the height divided by the width. So somehow obtain the gradient. So press pause and have a go. Okay, so to do this, what's happening here is that you've moved. Hang on, let me bring back the grid. Looking at this here, you've moved 6 back and then 2 up, 2 up. That will then take you to this point. Well, for this point here, you've moved -1 back and then -2 down, -2 down. So that will then take you to here. But you want to somehow obtain this height. Remember, when you're doing this, you won't be given the grid. But if you want to obtain this height, you should be looking at the y value here and the y value here, because the height is concerned about you moving in the y direction. So here you've moved 2 up, and then here you've moved -2 down. So the total height will be 4. And then you somehow need to obtain this length here. Well, if you look at this, if you want to obtain this length here, you should be looking at the x value here and the x value here. Because if you want to obtain the width, you're moving along the x in the x direction. So you should be looking at the x and the x. Well, here, hang on, let me clear this. Here, hang on. You want to somehow obtain this width here. Here you've moved -6 back, and then here you've moved -1 back. So the total length will be, well, -6 back and then -1. So this length here would be 5. So somehow develop a way of getting this length of 5 given -6 and -1. Well, hang on, let's start again here. Let me get rid of the grid. So you need to obtain the gradient. So the gradient is given by the height divided by the across. So the height, you should be looking at this and at this. The height turns out to be 4. The across here, you should be looking at this and at this. The across turns out to be 5. The gradient is always the height divided by the base. So it's always the height divided by the base. So the gradient is given by the height divided by the base. But because it's going downhill, then stick a negative in front of it. So this here is your gradient. Okay. So next one. So hang on. Next one. Work out the gradient of this straight line. So this point here, you can see you would move back -6 and then -2 down. And then this point here, you would move -3 back and then -4 down, -4 down. That will then take you to here. Or somehow you won't be given the grid, so somehow work out the gradients of this line. So press pause and have a go. Okay, so to do this, well, to work out the gradient, you always need to know the height divided by the base. Well, the height, if you want to obtain the height, you should be looking at this number and this number. You should be looking at the y and the y here. So hang on. So you should be looking at this and at this. So bear with me. So looking at this point here, you move -6 and then -2 down. So this length here is 2. So you've moved -2 down here. But then this point here, you can see that you've moved 3 across and then -4 down. So -4. So you could have somehow obtained this length here. You could have somehow obtained this length here. Well, let me bring back the grid. Where's the grid? So somehow you need to obtain this length here. Well, the length here is, well, -2 down and -4 down. The length is actually 2. So let me start again here. Hang on. So here you want to obtain this length here because you want to know the gradient. You need to know this height here. Well, the height. Well, if you look at this, you've gone 2 down. That's from here to here. That's -2, and then here you've gone -4 down, -4 down. But you're only interested in this length here. Well, if this is -4 and this is -2, then the height here will be 2. So let's start again here. The height is actually 2. Now you need to somehow obtain this length. hang on, let me remove the grid. So you now need to obtain this length. Well, here, to obtain the length, you should be looking at the x and the x here. Here you've gone -6 back, and then here you've gone -3 back. So, but you're interested in this length here. Well, this length here turns out to be 3. You've got to develop a way of getting the length from here, between here and here. So, well, here you've gone -6 back, and then -3 here. So the length in between must be 3. Well, the gradient is always the height divided by the across. So the gradient is always the height divided by the across. But it's going downhill, so you would stick a negative in front of it. So this is your gradient. Okay? So next one. Somehow obtain the gradient for this. So you've got one point in this quadrant. Here you've got 4 quadrants here. You've got one point in this quadrant and the other point in the other quadrant. But somehow you need to obtain the height and the width. So well, anyway, work out the gradient. So press pause and have a go. Okay, so to do this, if you look at this point, you've moved -3 back and then 2 up, and then this point here you've moved 5 across and then -2 down. But you're interested in this height here. You're interested in this height. Well, here you've moved 2 up because of this 2, and here you've moved 2 down. So the height is actually 4. The total height here would be 4. Now, to obtain the width here, well, if you look at this, you've moved -3. You've moved hang on. So here you've moved -3 back, -3, and then here you've moved +5. So the actual length here is actually 8. So let's start again here. Hang on. To work out the gradient here, to work out this height, you need to be looking at this and this. It turns out to be 4 because here you moved 2 up, here you moved 2 down, or it turns out to be 4. To obtain this width here, you should be looking at this and this. You've moved -3 back and +3 forward, so the total length would be 8. Okay, so the gradient is always the height divided by the base. So the height is 4 and the base is 8. And then you can simplify this to 1/2. So the gradient is actually a half. But because it's going downhill, you stick a negative in front of it. So this is your final gradient, -1/2. Okay, so next one. Somehow work out the gradient of this line. So you've got a point in this quadrant and a point in this quadrant. So somehow work out the gradient. It's always the height divided by the base, but you need to somehow work out the height and somehow work out the base. So press pause and have a go. Okay, so to do this, hang on. So if you look at what's going on here, here you moved 3 across and then -2 down, -2. Here you've moved -4 across because of this, -4, and then you moved 2, and then you moved -4 down. So here's the thing: you've moved 2 down here, -2 down. Here you've moved -4 down, but you're interested in this height. You're interested in this height. Well, the height, or -4 and -2. You've got to somehow develop a way of getting the height. As it turns out, the height will be 2. Because you've gone 4 down and then 2 down here. So the height here must be 2. You've got to somehow develop a way of getting this height. And then the width here would be, well, here you've moved, hang on, let's start again. So let's start again here. So to obtain this height here, you should be looking at this and looking at this. You've gone 4 down here, -4 down here, and here you've gone -2 down. The height here would be 2. Okay, and then to obtain the width, you should be looking at this and at this. Here you've gone -4 back. Here you've gone +3 across. So the width here would be 7. So the gradient would be the height. The gradient would be the height divided by the width. The height here is 2, and the width here is 7, and it's going uphill. So So we don't need to stick a negative in front of it. So this is our final gradient, 2/7. Okay.